Welcome to the JTF podcast. I'm your host, Jason Selton. And just to tell you guys, if you're a Buddhist or just in general somebody who might get offensive of what I'm about to say about Buddhism, just to tell you that, fair warning, you might get offended. Why Buddhism only doesn't help people? Now, when I mean Buddhism only, I mean by saying Buddhism, like only Buddhism does this, or only Buddhism does this, and other religions don't do it, which is not true. Now, I do think that Buddhism has this place in the world in a sense of a way for some people. But all it does, from what I've researched and what I've watched and listened to, is pretty much telling people to do good things at the end of the day, which is nothing wrong. But Buddhism isn't the only belief that teaches this, like Christianity, Hinduism, and Islam. Yes, Islam, because, the Quran isn't the only book in Islam, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm just saying in most religions in general, they teach people to be good. And I don't think Buddhism was the first religion to do that, obviously. I think there were other beliefs before Buddhism, because that makes sense, like Hinduism, because Buddha was a Hindu prince, if you know the history of Buddha and his story. So there is, if you guys don't know Buddha's story, I'll give you a sort of quick introduction of the person, the Buddha himself. The Buddha used to be a Hindu prince, and his dad was prophesied by a priest. The priest prophesied to the Buddha's dad that he can do two things. The Buddha can do two things. One, he'll grow up to be a great king and ruler. I think rule over the whole world, I think he said. And the second choice that the Buddha had, to be a monk, which the Buddha chose to be the monk, which honestly, in my own personal opinion, I think if the Buddha was a king, he could have been sort of like the India version of King David, like the greatest kings in India, because his message and his philosophy is pretty good to an extent that would really help his country and the whole world. But I think he made the wrong choice in becoming a monk and becoming poor. He should have kept his beliefs and still be a prince, because I think he could have done really good things as a king, being honest. This is how I see Buddhism. Buddhism says how to be good, but not why. And as a Christian, I know why I should be good, because somebody who is good, who created good, who's the embodiment of good, God, the God of the Bible, tells me to do good, because it's not only good for people, it's good for me. And in other religions, they also tell you sort of why, in a sense of a way. And Buddhism doesn't really say why to help, it just says how to. It usually says because it's a good thing, and that's why. Nothing really there, being honest. Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you more of a Buddha's story. I'm so sorry about that. But I guess you can say the stuff that I was saying was a little bit of a side note. To continue, at I think age 16, his whole 16 years, his father wanted him to be a king, so he did not let him see sickness, death, and old age throughout all his life, all of the Buddha's life, till 16, because that's when he realized that oldness, death, and sickness, and I think also poverty existed. So pretty much from a baby to 16, the Buddha only saw healthy, healthy, young, um, alive and well people and women, because at that time, he was a prince. And most princes in the East usually had, women that danced for them and all that. I'm not going to get into that, but that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I think it was 16. He actually finally had I think the right to see his fellow countrymen, and a servant took him to see his fellow countrymen, and I think it was from the Hindu gods to show them or something like that. And if I'm correct, when Buddha saw, I think it was old age first, he asked, why does this person look wrinkly, to his servant, and he said, well, because he's old, and that's life, in a sense. So he didn't necessarily say that, that's not a quote, but he pretty much said that. And then Buddha saw, I think it was death, and then I think it was either a carcass and or a funeral, and he was saying, why is that person not moving? And his servant said, because he's dead, that's life. And the other one was sickness, and the Buddha said to his servant at that time, Prince Saitama, I think his name was, Gautama Buddha, he said, why does that person doesn't look right? Like he looks sick. And his servant said, well, because that person is sick. That's life. He didn't say that's life, but I think he said something like that, saying that's just how it goes. And being honest, in my own personal opinion, remember, all his 16 years, he hasn't seen death, sickness, old age, and death. And also probably, I think he said something like, I think Gautama Buddha said, at that time, his name was called Gautama Buddha, if I'm correct, or just Prince Gautama. Prince Gautama said, I think, to the poor, we saw a poor person, why he said, why is that person wearing rags? And his servant said, because that person is poor and that's life. Like, he didn't say that's life, but I'm just saying that's what he pretty much said, like, that's the way things are, sadly, that's just how they are. So I feel like, you can look up this yourself, this is Buddha's story, I'm not lying to you guys, this is, I think, one of Buddha's stories, or the story of Buddha, historically, and from Buddhism, that I honestly think that his mind could not handle what he saw. He thought that it just was so not true that he thought it was an illusion. Because I think he asked this question, why would the gods let this happen, the gods of Hinduism? Remember, the Buddha used to be a Hindu priest, Hindu prince, pretty much a prince from India, but a Hindu prince at that time. So he thought it was all an illusion. I forgot by who, I think it was from some demon, I think it was called Mara. He thought that. And most people don't think that, being honest, but he thought that. So he went to find out why this is all how everything is. So he went to monk after monk after monk, and if I'm correct, he did listen to them and practice their stuff. Like, I think it was fasting. Yes, fasting is very old, like in the Bible times, obviously, and other types of meditation. I think punishment of self, and the other one, and when he was, I think, very skinny to where you can really see his bones, like just see them. And he had a very long beard and very hairy. And he was only, I think, eating one grain, like one grain of rice each day. Which, of course, as Christians, God wouldn't tell us to do something like that unless if he was preparing us for something. We really don't see that type of a fast, like one rice a day fast. So, I mean, I'm just saying. That was a little bit of a joke, but I'm just saying in general, we really don't see that in the Bible or Christianity. But again, that's not the point in this case. To continue on with Buddha's story. So, one day, if I'm correct, it was daytime, a little girl, I don't think they specifically said her age, so it could have been 14 and or a little bit older at that time. I don't know the age of Buddha, he could have been 17 or 18. I don't know when he ran away from his home without telling anybody. We will maybe get into more of that later, but if you know the story, I think you know what I'm talking about by running away. Anyways, the little girl went to him and gave him more than one grain of rice. I think it was like a full, I don't know how big it was, but it was maybe pretty much like medium sized, like bowl. And then through that, from I think History Channel did a documentary, and one person who is a I think Buddhist author who writes Buddhist literature said this was a sign of grace, not by a deity like Jesus. This is not a quote, I'm just paraphrasing it. It was by a little girl, and from that he learned the middle path, the balance of things in his own way. And there's other religions that sort of have this sort of balance, like ideology, like Christianity, but it's a little bit different than Buddhism. And I won't say it's a lot more complicated, but I think Christians who know what I'm talking about, we do have sort of a little bit of a balance thing in Christianity, in the sense of the balance of spending time with God and being in a well, no, sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have looked that up. I'm so sorry, guys. Ignore that little part there with the balance of Christianity. But there is a little bit of a sort of balance thing with Christianity. I honestly did forget what it was, but again, that's not the point. And through that kindness or grace of that little girl, the Buddha understood the middle path, the Dharma, the enlightened one, who I think knows everything, but still needs to learn. I think that's what Dharma is. I know it means something like enlightened. So, yeah, there is that. And that is sort of, essentially, pretty much part of the origin story of how the Buddha became the Buddha. And Buddhism in general. And I'll give you an example of what maybe most likely a Buddhist would do in a situation. Say that they are a rich person. If they want to help the poor, according to Buddhism, they would have to give away their riches. I want to go to the mountains, but most likely leave their family, maybe shave their head. I think that is a traditional requirement. And the History Channel documentary, which I get a lot of this information from, I forgot where it was, but if I'm correct, it was somewhere in India, that this was at a young age. This was in a young age. When boys become Buddhists, they leave their families, save their heads, and I think go into isolated places like mountains and meditate pretty much for the rest of their lives. That is not every Buddhist, and I know that. So there is that. And just to tell you guys, there are other Buddhists called modern Buddhists who pretty much say Buddha is just like Jesus, even though that's not even true. Modern Buddhists try to change a lot of traditions of Buddhism because a lot of things in Buddhism might not make sense or are, I wouldn't say hypocritical, but just wouldn't work in the modern day era. Same thing with modern Hinduism and modern Islam. Now, Christianity, it says God's word stays the same yesterday, today, and forever. So I'm not going to say modern Christians because there is no such thing as that. But in this case, with Hinduism, Buddhism, well, I think only Buddhism. I think Buddha did say that he could be wrong in some things, but he's most likely right. That is not a quote from him, but pretty much from correct Buddhism and the Buddha in general can admit that they might not have it all, but they most likely have something. Other religions, I don't think really say that. I think the only other religion might say that is Hinduism. They're pretty similar, so being honest, that would make sense. Sorry. And in general, I don't think that Buddhism really helps anybody because all it does is acknowledging of doing good things makes you a good person. Like, I can learn that from Christianity and other religions. So I'm not saying it doesn't have its place, I'm just saying it doesn't have any difference with our religions that much. It doesn't, for me, it doesn't give me anything new, unlike Christianity. Which in my opinion, everybody else's opinion, should be a Christian's opinion, that Jesus pretty much, was not in the religious establishment, and Buddha only pretty much was part, and Buddhism in general was part of the religious establishment. If you don't know what the religious establishment is, sorry about that, it's pretty much what I made up is the two parts that establish religion. And I do understand that religion is by definition, a belief in a higher power. But there's more to that, like the worksism and the miracleism. Worksism was, I think I made up. I think it's a made up word, which I made up. I need to look this up so I won't, I think I did. I don't think worksism is the actual word. That is, I did make that up. I'm like, worksism. Pretty much worksism is the thought or the idea, if you do pretty much good karma and bad karma, do good works and do as much works as possible, you can make it to your perfect place when you die. And miracleism is not what Christianity is supposed to be, but some so-called Christians are sometimes miracleist. Even though they're not Christian, they're miracleist. Miracleist is not a word, it's a word that I made up, and it means that pretty much you do so many miracles that you think that you're going to get to heaven by just doing so many miracles and healing people without having love or relationship. You do nothing according to Christianity. Just because you do miracles, that doesn't mean you automatically get to heaven, just because you might have that power by God to do miracles, but not. But if you don't love, you do nothing. It does say when Jesus said, I think this is Matthew 7, verse 20, I think 7 and or 8 through, I think, the end of Matthew chapter 7. It says, Jesus said, not everybody who calls me Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of God. And if they say, "But Lord, I did all these miracles. In your name, I cast demons in your name." And I will reply to them saying, "I never knew you. Get behind me, you work of iniquity," because that person might have not had love and or might not try to have a relationship with Jesus, but only because of the miracles and the power that there are only Christians. Well, sadly, there are some Christians who are there just because of that, and that's wrong. And they're being honest, they're not Christian because we shouldn't just be doing miracles and power just because. We do it of showing that there is a God who loves you and wants the best for you. Yeah, I mean, again, Buddhism does have its place. I think Buddhism to me is a religion and a philosophy of reminding people how to be good and do good things. But in terms of the Christian perspective, it will not lead you to heaven. Buddhism is not Christianity, and vice versa. The Buddha was not a secret Christian, or Jesus was a Buddhist monk. They have different things. They say different things. They might say some things that are the same. But one person, I think he's a pastor, who I also learned by my research about the Buddha, said if people think that Jesus and Buddha, and if I'm correct, he also said Christianity, Buddhism are the same, it would bring shame to both of them. And because he believes what I believe, that they both, Buddhism and Christianity, and Jesus and the Buddha, have unique characteristics. And if you say that they're the same, it would dishonor that uniqueness with those two people and those two beliefs. And that's what I think as well, in general. So, yeah, in my own personal opinion, from what I've researched, at the end. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention. If I didn't mention this, I do believe in a in concerning way. I think I did say Buddha might have had a mental illness because he thought everything was an illusion, and how to defeat that illusion is to meditate and to be in oneself and be enlightened in the Dharma. And he also thinks bondage, as in of relationships and stuff like that, he's against any form of bondage. Even if it's like I cling to my wife, Buddha would say, no, that is a clinging, that is wrong. You shouldn't do that. He does believe in that. He is sort of a radical, sort of liberal in a way. Like, he's very libertarian, that he wants to liberate everybody from any clinging, even clinging toward your son or daughter. According to what I've researched and known, Buddha is against any clinging to or boundary, or like, again, I cling to my wife. Buddha would say, no, that is wrong, that is a clinging or a boundary. I forgot what he says, I think a bondage. So he's very liberative to the point that you just don't have a relationship, because that would be a bond to him. That would be you clinging to somebody, so therefore you're not free. That is what he says, and that is what he thinks. You can look it up yourself. And most modern Buddhists might say, no, he says other things. Okay, find them in the secret text and in books, and most authors admit to this by their books. And most of the stuff I researched were by Buddhists from history of the Buddha, in Buddhism and in history. And also, the Buddha was a philosopher, So I don't know. This is a little bit of a side note to sort of end it here. I don't know why some street preachers like Cleveland street preacher, I think this will be the last time I'm going to speak to this person. Unless, if he might respond to my podcast and or my videos, if I might mention him in my videos, most likely not. Just to tell you guys that people like Cleveland Street Preacher think that people are worshipping Buddha or, because he's dead, therefore you shouldn't follow him. First of all, Buddha never claimed to rise from the dead, one, and he never claimed to be a god, two. I think Buddha pretty much said that gods were overrated. Pretty much. Because the stuff that he teaches, according to Christianity, will try to basically say that you are a god. Or you are God. You control everything. In a sense of a way. So, yeah, I do think Buddhism has its place, but as a Christian, I don't think it'll lead you to heaven. As a Christian, I don't think you should follow it. You can't follow two masters. Or, in a better way, you can't follow two people. Either you follow Buddhism or Christianity. You can't be both and get to heaven. You can't. Buddhism might say that, but Christianity doesn't. So this to tell you guys that, in general. Yeah, I just think that Buddhism in some cases doesn't really help. It just sort of helps you remember rather than helps, because only Christianity would say not to do works but have a relationship with the only divine, which is God. And only Christianity will tell you to deny yourself. That is a fact. Jesus says to deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow me. That's what Jesus says. That Christianity only says that, pretty much. To deny yourself in that way. And only Christianity would say to be, well, I think it says to be, not of the world, but be with the world, not with it, but since we live here, we're in the world, we follow the laws of this world, but when it comes to our faith, we can't compromise. If I'm correct, that is the only religion that says not to compromise, or is a big fan of not compromising, from my research. And just, again, Buddhism only, as in only Buddhism does this, is not true. There are others that says to be kind to others and to be kind to yourself, to remember yourself, and to be good to yourself and to help yourself, also to help others. And Buddhism doesn't really say that much of helping others. It's usually like by yourself, within yourself, for yourself. That is a little bit part of Buddhism. I don't remember Buddha saying doing this for others. It's usually saying doing this for yourself or within yourself, by yourself, for yourself. And again, that can help for some people because some people forget themselves. But Christianity will be better because it tells you how to take care of yourself and why you should take care of yourself. Because others do, and God loves you, and if you love yourself, you would take care of yourself and love others. Because when you love others, you also, in a sense of a way, love yourself. Do unto others as you do unto you. And pretty much everybody follows it, but just that and not Christianity, which is a little bit off because that was from Christianity, but that's not the point. I think there are good people there, Christian or not. So just to tell you guys that I don't think the only good people in the world are Christians, but by my belief, if you're not a Christian, you're not going to go to heaven. But I can still be friends with you. You might not agree with that. And that's fine. You think that might be wrong. Okay, we can still be friends. I mean, unless you do something that I know is against my belief and against morality in general, then we have a problem. But other than that, we can still be friends. I'm just saying what the Bible says because I'm a Christian. And, I follow Christ and the Word because Jesus is the Word. So I follow the Bible as well. But not everything because I know that there is something called historical context and something called Old and New Testament. So I don't follow everything in the Bible, but I follow what God still says to follow in the Bible when you reread it. But trying to end this, pretty much Buddhism, or I should say this, Buddhism by itself doesn't help, but maybe something else should, or just something else like just Christianity, in my own belief. And I'm not against Buddhists. I'm not trying to bash Buddhism. I'm just saying, in my opinion, from what I know and research, Buddhism alone doesn't help in general, but it still helps in general for some people. Also, I would rather Christianity than Buddhism because Christianity has a lot more to life in my own personal opinion than Buddhism. You might not agree with that, but that's okay. We can still be friends, but I just think that Christianity has a lot more to offer than Buddhism, and that's why I'm not a Buddhist, and that's why I don't follow the philosophy of the Buddha, because Christianity and Jesus Christ himself has just a lot more to offer in life, in my own personal opinion. God bless and have a great day.